Hello and welcome to this video tutorial on dominant and recessive genes. There are 4 key ideas. The first 2 are taken from the off of the ACARA website. The first is for you to have the ability of representing patterns of inheritance through simple dominant and recessive characteristics throughout generations of a family. The second is having the ability then to predict using the genotypes of the paternal-maternal parents and predicting the phenotypes of the offspring. This will be done using Punnett squares. The third is to know that genotypes determines the phenotype. And the fourth, or knowing the definitions of heterozygous, homozygous dominant, and homozygous recessive. Let's look at alleles. Now, an allele is a variant form of a gene. Some genes have a variety of different forms, which are located at the same position on a chromosome. So if we were to have a look at this example right here, this pair, chromosome pair number 1, we have one chromosome from the paternal parent, which is the father, and another chromosome from the maternal, which is the mother. Now on both of these chromosomes, we have a gene right there that codes for eye color, and there's another gene right here that codes for eye color from the mother. Say from the father, this eye color on this chromosome is brown. You get what I mean? And on the chromosome from the maternal that you inherited, this one codes for blue eyes. This is when genetics come into play, because you have both genes in your body, but now the one that is expressed and the one that is your physical characteristics depends on the genetics. And this then leads us into the dominant and recessive traits. Humans are called diploid organisms because they have 2 alleles. One of them is inherited from the paternal and one from the maternal. We have characteristic that we could possibly express from the paternal and another possible characteristic from the maternal. This is why it's called diploid, di meaning 2. This then brings us into dominant and recessive genes. There are 2 alleles because we are diploid. We have 2 possible physical characteristics that our body can choose from. Now this is all dependent whether it is a dominant trait or whether it is a recessive trait. If we are looking at eye color, comparing blue and brown eyes, we know that brown eyes is a dominant trait. There are 2 possible genotypes that my father has. For him to have brown eyes, he could either have the heterozygous genotype, hetero meaning 2 different, so his genotype could possibly be capital B and lowercase b, which gives rise to still brown eye color, brown. Or he could have homozygous dominant, homo meaning the same, dominant meaning the dominant trait, which is brown, so he could have capital B, and that still codes for brown eyes. These are the 2 possibilities that he could have. The top one is heterozygous, the bottom one is homozygous dominant. If I were to say that my mother has homozygous recessive, what does that mean, or what does that look like? Homozygous meaning the same, therefore it would be recessive, homozygous recessive, lowercase b, which gives us blue eyes. Now why wouldn't my mother have capital B and lowercase b? Well, we know because in that genotype there is the dominant gene. Therefore, if that were her genotype, she would then have brown eyes, which she doesn't. So we can get rid of that. At this stage, we definitely know my mother's genotype, and thus the phenotype. We know my father's phenotype, which is his physical characteristic, which is brown eyes, but we do not necessarily know his genotype because there is possibility number 1 and possibility number 2 right here. Given that the offspring, we have 50% with brown eyes, right here. That's my brother and sister, and we have 50% with blue eyes. That's myself and my younger brother. From this, are you able then to determine the genotype of my father? Let's have a look at using a Punnett square. A Punnett square is drawn like this. And at the top, you do the genotype for the paternal parent. So if we go back, my father, he either had this option, number 1, which is capital B, lowercase b, heterozygous, capital B, lowercase b. And my mother, we will put her genotype on the left-hand side. And her genotype, that one's nice and easy, is just homozygous recessive, lowercase b, lowercase b. We want to cross them over, and from here we have capital B, lowercase b. Everything that is in the circle are the possible outcomes for the offspring. So if we have this one, capital B, little b, we have little b going across, so this one's little b, this one's capital B, little b, and the final one is little b. Let's write out the possible genotypes of the 4 offspring. We have capital B, lowercase b, we have capital B, lowercase b, we have lowercase b. There we go. This then gives rise to brown eye color. The second one then has brown eye color, and the last 2 are blue eye colors. Therefore, 50%, half of the offspring will have brown eye color, and 50% will have blue eye color. If we go back to the diagram, that is exactly what our family has. 50% of the offspring, of my parents' offspring, have brown eyes, and 50% have blue eyes. Thus, looking at that, we can determine not only my mother's genotype, but we can say with confidence that my father's genotype is the heterozygous, the option number 1. Let's look at the little fishies' genetics. We have 2 fish, and they are black fish. The information given says that the black color is a dominant color, therefore it's represented by a capital B. And the red color, which is another possibility, is recessive, and it's represented by a lowercase b. If we were to look at the genotypes of these little fish, let's look at this one. The genotype of this fish, they have 2 possible genotypes. This one, for it to be black, could either be heterozygous, capital B, lowercase b, meaning hetero, meaning 2 different ones, which is still a black fish, or he could possibly have homozygous dominant, which is capital B, capital B. Let's have a look at the other fish. This fish has 2 possible genotypes. He could be heterozygous, or he could be homozygous dominant, which is capital B, capital B. Both of these genotypes give rise to a black fish, much like this one. Now, these are the fish's offspring. We have 3 black fish, and we have 1 red fish. Now, this is interesting. I guess the question will then be, what are the genotypes of the maternal and paternal? What are the genotypes of the parents? For them to have 3 black fish yet 1 red fish, we can determine the genotypes of the parent fish using Punnett squares. If we do the paternal fish at the top, now remember there are 2 possible outcomes. This is the paternal fish. He could either be heterozygous or homozygous dominant. Let's try homozygous dominant first, which is capital B, capital B. The maternal fish, again, 2 possible genotypes. Let's do homozygous dominant. Now if we do the crossing over, so we have capital B, capital B. So if these were the fishies' genotypes, 100% of the offspring, so 100% of the 4 offspring would be black in color. Because they have a red fish offspring, we can rule out the fact that both of the fishies have homozygous dominant genotypes. So let's look at an alternative one. Remember, we want to find where 3 of the fish are black and one fish is red. So let's look at another possible outcome. Well, let's look at the paternal being heterozygous, capital B, lowercase b, and let's have a look at the maternal being homozygous dominant, and we'll see what happens. So capital B, capital B, capital B, lowercase b, capital B, capital B, capital B, lowercase b. The genotypes of the fish, we have homozygous dominant right there, we have another homozygous dominant right there, and we have two heterozygous, which means that 100% of these fish are still black. Therefore, we have to rule out this combination of genotypes. So that's obviously not one. We have one more variation, which is, using our Punnett square, one more variation, we have both fish being heterozygous, capital B, lowercase b, capital B, lowercase b. So if both of them are heterozygous, we would get, yay! Alright, if both of them are heterozygous, we have one fish that is homozygous dominant, which is black. We have two fish that are heterozygous, which are both still black. And then we have one little fish which is homozygous recessive, which is red. Awesome! And because now we have three fish that are black and one fish that is red, much like the photo shown right here, three fish that are black, one is red, we can say with confidence that the paternal and maternal, their genotypes, are both heterozygous. Therefore, if we get rid of all of this, we can say that this paternal fish right here has capital B, lowercase b genotype, and this one also has a capital B, lowercase b.